PACE is becoming a public health issue in schools, by Katie Wiseman. Something is happening inside schools that we are not talking about nearly enough. Everything is moving too fast. The pacing, the transitions, the expectation, the academic demands, the constant performance pressure placed on children, teachers, and administrators alike. And while we continue debating curriculum, test scores, discipline, attendance, shorting staffages, and of course, behavior, we are missing something deeper happening underneath all of it. Human nervous systems are struggling to keep up with the pace of modern schooling. I believe PACE itself is becoming a public health issue in education. Not because children should never experience challenge, stress, rigor, or accountability. Human beings are capable of extraordinary growth under the right conditions. But growth requires access. And access changes under chronic stress. As a longtime special educator, I spent decades watching what happened to children when environments became too fast, too unpredictable, too pressured, or too emotionally disconnected. What many adults interpreted as laziness, defiance, avoidance, disrespect, withdrawal, or lack of motivation was often something very different: a nervous system losing access. When human beings feel chronically overwhelmed, the body adapts. Attention narrows, flexibility decreases, emotional regulation weakens, problem solving becomes harder, behavior becomes more reactive, connection becomes more difficult. Children are not the only ones affected by this. Teachers are too. Administrators are too. Entire campuses begin adapting to urgency. And once urgency becomes chronic enough, something subtle but devastating begins happening inside organizations. People stop relating to one another as human beings and start relating to one another as responsibilities, problems, data points, timelines, and performance outcomes. The environment itself begins organizing around survival. I have watched extraordinary educators slowly lose access to themselves under relentless pressure. Thoughtful teachers become emotionally exhausted. Compassionate administrators become transactional. Children who once loved learning begin living in constant stress activation. Not because people stopped caring, but because pace changes people. Human nervous systems require moments of orientation, predictability, connection, rhythm, reflection, and recovery in order to function well. Without those things, bodies begin organizing around protection instead of learning. And protection can wear many disguises. Sometimes it looks like aggression, sometimes withdrawal, sometimes avoidance, sometimes perfectionism, sometimes emotional shutdown, sometimes exhaustion, sometimes apathy. The behavior is often the last thing we notice, even though the nervous system changes happened much earlier. One of the greatest misunderstandings in education is the belief that more pressure automatically creates better outcomes. Pressure can produce compliance, but compliance and access are not the same thing. A child can appear compliant while internally overwhelmed. A teacher can appear productive while emotionally depleted. A leader can appear effective while slowly losing relational connection to the people around them. That distinction matters more than we realize. The body does not learn best under chronic survival conditions. Neither do organizations. Children need environments where challenge exists alongside emotional safety, predictability, belonging, and regulation. Adults do too. Human beings are remarkably adaptive, but adaptation cuts both ways. When systems remain in chronic urgency long enough, people adapt to surviving instead of thriving. And eventually, the cost begins showing up everywhere. Mental health struggles, behavioral escalations, teacher burnout, emotional exhaustion, disconnection, rigidity, anxiety, and children who increasingly struggle to access themselves inside environments that never slow down long enough to notice what their bodies are carrying. This is not an argument against excellence. It's an argument for humanity because pace matters. The nervous system experiences pace biologically, not philosophically. Human beings cannot remain deeply relational, emotionally regulated, cognitively flexible, and physically well under chronic urgency forever without something beginning to erode. And right now, too much is eroding. We do not need schools with less learning. We need schools with enough humanity built into the pace of learning that nervous systems can remain accessible while learning happens. Because when human beings feel safe enough, connected enough, and regulated enough to access themselves fully, learning does not weaken.